right, greetings and welcome to another episode of the Sovereign Lounge. We are your hosts here. I am Round the World Man with Yamin Fauzi. Today, we want to talk to you about some important topics on sovereignty and some of these more timeless topics, things that necessarily don't expire so quickly. Let's talk about travel history, Yamin, becoming sovereign with travel history. What are some of these key items that are kind of timeless in a sense when it comes to you have what may be considered to be a bad passport or a not ideal passport for travel purposes, and maybe you want to add additional options there somehow. A lot of people say hey, because I'm a citizen of country X and country X is considered to be low status or in one way or another, people just think they're locked into this forever. But of course, we know that's not true. So, whether you want to use the term escape or whether you want to use the term adding additional options, what are some of your strategies there?
Okay, well, I thoroughly prepared this topic because it has been in top of my mind for a couple of months, and I really want to give some sort of tutorial or how to escape a bad passport situation or limited options, let's say it like this, because you can always have more options regardless of what your status is. So today I'm going to give you an example of something that I have, and this is the Moroccan citizenship. I'm a national of both Morocco and Switzerland. I was actually born with a Swiss passport first, before I got my Moroccan. I only applied for the Moroccan citizenship about 6 years ago, where I got it through my father. So yeah, that's when I got it. And the Moroccan citizenship is called, in most RCBI places, it's called a Tier C passport. So it doesn't have Schengen access, it doesn't have US ESTA or Canada or UK access. So it gives you limited options. Let's say like this, because the world is not just Schengen and North America; it's also a lot more places. But what if you have these limited options? Morocco is not the worst place on earth, but it's also not on the top 10 of the countries with, let's say, options when it comes to financial stuff, making business, etc. So it's not sanctioned, which is good. So we're going to talk about cases where if you're sanctioned, then there are some other routes that you need to take in consideration. Quickly, I'm going to show you the roadmap here.
Yeah. I mean, just for
According,
any of our viewers that are maybe new into this world of being a sovereign man or a sovereign woman, can you just give a quick summary or a couple sentences on when you talk about sanctions? What are you actually getting at there? What does that mean?
well, sanctions countries, they usually refer mostly to well-known case as of today in 2025, May. Countries like Belarus or Russia, North Korea, Iran, Afghanistan, they are heavily sanctioned by Western companies. What does it mean? So that means that you can perhaps not use any payment processors. You are banned from opening companies or applying for residency or citizenship by investment programs. And these are usually a very limited set of countries. I would say about around a dozen countries. It's usually always the same suspects. How I would say it's usually Iran, Afghanistan, Russia, Sudan often will be mentioned as well. Myanmar also, North Korea is a classic one, and then there's also the special case with Palestine, which I'm going to explain uh, later on, which is also kind of sanctioned
Right.
because certain citizenships are not recognized by many other governments. Is it
Right.
fair or not? This
Right.
is up to debate, but that's just how the world operates these
Right.
days.
Well, sanctions probably
And
could be its own topic for a Sovereign Lounge episode. But
correct.
yeah, that's a great kind of primer there for any of our viewers that are trying to get more informed and educated on these topics. So yeah, as far as this becoming more sovereign with travel history, I really want to learn more about this. So what do you have for us right now? You're giving us, obviously, it sounds like the example based on a lot of your personal experience being a Moroccan citizen. What can you share with us now?
Okay, so what you can see here now is the map of visa-free travel arrangements for Moroccan citizens. So Morocco has actually gained a lot of countries in the past couple of years and has become stronger and stronger. So you don't need a visa, for example, to enter Turkey. You don't need a visa to travel to Thailand, South Korea, for example, also Colombia. So there's a bunch of countries which you can absolutely travel to. And I think as a starter position, with a Moroccan passport, you can travel to a bunch of actually very decent countries, um, even first world countries like Hong Kong or South Korea, for example. Um, I mean, Malaysia is a middle income. It's almost first world in modern terms. For me, it is. But yeah, so this is the starter position that I give. So, what can you do when you have like a passport, like the Moroccan one, a Tier C passport, but you want to get access to Schengen, you want to get access to the United States, for example, Canada, the UK, this like Tier A countries, So first, what I would recommend to young guys, especially to young guys, that to learners, a skill that you can sell. And why do I mention this in the first place? What does it have to do with residency? Because with a skill, you can sell stuff. But as you probably know, in Morocco, the minimum wage is about, I would say, 400 US dollars, maybe even less than this. The average wage, depending where you are, is between 800 and 1,000 US dollars. So you cannot make a lot of money off of that customer base, and also limited to only 40 million, 30 to 40 million people in the country. So learning a skill is essential so you can sell that skill. And how do you sell that skill? Well, with a travel history, I'll come to this part later. The first step is, I mean, you can do it both ways. You can build travel history and sell something, and then go up the ladder when it comes to sovereignty. So you can make money outside of Morocco. For example, you open a US LLC or a Hong Kong LLC. You can, or any other type of online business essentially. But I use these two specific examples because they are very cheap and you can open it online. You can open a US LLC for as little as a couple of $100. A Hong Kong LLC is also in that range, up to maybe 1,000. So it's very doable, if you save up a little bit and then just open this. So opening that company will allow you to sell your services outside of the territory of Morocco. So let's say you are a freelancer in graphics design or a programmer, you can sell services into the United States as a US LLC. And I mentioned earlier that Palestine is one of these quote unquote sanctioned countries, and the United States doesn't recognize Palestine. So Palestinian citizen cannot open a US LLC because it is not recognized as a sovereign state. However, you can bypass this with a Hong Kong LLC. And then you have, yeah, you basically run your own business. You can save up some money. And since the wages are usually lower, you can save this money up to build your travel history. So let's say you travel to a bunch of non-problematic countries, because you can make a good travel history and you can make a bad travel history. So let's say for some reason you go to Afghanistan on holidays. This is not a good travel history, because you will be interrogated in every Western airport and also some other airports. Why did you go to Afghanistan? You will quickly become subject to second inspections, to visa rejections, etc. So you build a travel history. I would say you can go to Malaysia, for example. You can stay 90 days there. You can go to Thailand, South Korea, Colombia as well. You can go to the Caribbean. With the Moroccan passport, you have lots of flexibility. Turkey, um, Qatar, South Africa, etc. So building a travel history means that, okay, well, it is important that I mentioned building a travel history because it builds reputation. So if you visit the country and then come back, visit the country, come back. That means that you always have the intention to come back. You don't violate any visa laws. You are a good traveler. You spend money, you're a good tourist, etc. And this is comes into the next step. I would say that if you are a resident, a citizen of a country like Morocco, is you need or you should be able to set up a residency somewhere cheap. So, Chris, what would you suggest are the best options? I'm throwing you here a little bit under the bus, but what would you suggest to set up a residency? What would be the best suggestion for a residency? The cheapest? Well, not the cheapest, but let's say the most affordable way.
Well, are you talking about, for in this example of like a Moroccan citizen who's trying to diversify? Because I had some follow-up questions when you talked about, you gave a specific example. I just want to do a rundown before I answer your question. I don't want you to think I'm evading your question, because it's a fair question. But there's a lot of data you just packed into this kind of this introduction on this topic, and so I just want to make sure I have these baseline parameters correct. So what you said was, if I understand correctly, in this case, you have a Moroccan citizen. Now, it seemed like your recommendation was in the lens of, say, like an online style business, either to open up a Hong Kong limited company or a limited company in one of the 50 USA states of the USA. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. And what I want to understand is, and again, I got to advocate for a lot of our viewers here on the Sovereign Lounge. I want to understand, how does that benefit me as, say, a citizen of Morocco from a travel perspective? If I want to do like a holiday in Muscat, for example, because I noticed that, well, it looks like maybe Oman is, maybe possibly visa free there for Morocco citizens. But, if I wanted to do a holiday somewhere, that maybe that isn't visa free for Morocco citizens, how does having my company registered in Hong Kong or maybe in Wyoming in the US, how does that benefit me? Can you at least give a summary on that before we move on to other things? Because this is the thing that I think is going to be confusing to a lot of our viewers in the Sovereign Lounge, and I want to eliminate confusion when possible.
That's actually an excellent question. Thank you for asking this, because when you apply for a visa in other countries, oftentimes what they ask you is two things: your recent travel history and also your bank statements. So they want to see how much money do you have, and if it's from a reputable bank from the United States or from Hong Kong, they will much easier accept it, because they say, oh, okay, this guy, he has money, he actually can afford to spend to spend money in a country where he has never been to. Okay. So this gives you a much better reputation, and this is why I recommend go there, especially if you are from a country that has not like a known banking scene or capital control restrictions.
Right.
This is an entire topic for itself, but if you have a reputable bank, something like for HSBC, for example, Wise, Mercury, or even Chase in the United States, then this reputable banking makes it much easier for you to get approved for visas and to travel to other countries.
So I want to rewind here now, because I had this kind of like a checklist in my head from listening to your introduction. So the checklist in this case, what you're saying is like, hey, I have a bad passport by by many factors. Let's say I'm a citizen of Morocco in your example. I want to make travel more easier, whether it's I want to go to a conference, maybe, we've discussed recently that Bitcoin has hit, all-time highs recently. A lot of people might be interested in cryptocurrencies or Web3 development. They might want to go to a conference somewhere, and they just, a lot of times these conferences are in places that are, these kind of quote flagship brand countries. They might need to do a visa application. So what you're saying is, in this situation, registering a company in, say, Hong Kong, or registering a company in Wyoming, and then getting some banking to go along with that is likely to be the actual strategy. Because just having the company register but no revenue isn't going to help them with a lot of these visa applications. They actually have to show that they're not just trying to skip. Yeah. They're not just trying to skip out on wherever their actual home is or wherever their nationality is, and trying to set up shop somewhere else, that they're legitimately trying to go to that Web3 conference, or they're trying to go to the LATAM Bitcoin conference or whatever it is. So they need the banking to go along with that, and they would need the bank statements to go essentially correlate that they're maybe, I hate to use this technical term, but an ultimate beneficiary owner or something like this, where there's a clear connection between, here's citizen of country, say Morocco in this case, he's the owner or director or administrator of this LLC in Hong Kong, and here's the banking that goes along with that. And then when he goes to do his visa application for some quote flagship branded country, that's where he's probably going to have a much higher rate of getting through. I want to understand, does that seem like the right orchestra and medley of ingredients for this strategy, or is there other things that we're missing here?
Correct. Yeah, this is like definitely one part of it. I mean, this is just for the sake of applying for tourist visas, because I will go a little bit more in length regarding then residency and potentially then citizenship as well. But this is the first step, because they want to know, okay, well, you have, let's say, $5,000 in the bank account when you want to visit a conference in, let's say, in the United States or in Europe or in Singapore or wherever. So they see, okay, $5,000 they can pin down. They cannot pin down much easier like South African rand, sorry to say it, or Zimbabwean dollars, or I don't know, whatever they use in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's much easier to grasp the monetary value from, as you mentioned, like a flagship branded country,
Right.
Like the US, the Euro zone,
Right.
Swiss francs.
That 100
even,
that centimillionaire in Zimbabwe dollars probably won't help you, given that they've had that hyperinflation some years ago. So
correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially that's really the kind of 3-tier structure you're saying is like having that company that they're essentially the director of and or employee, because I guess in some scenarios you can be a director and an employee. That kind of varies by jurisdiction, but essentially showing that is at least the company that's paying you when it comes to like your bank statements. And now I want to ask again, since we're talking about visa applications to kind of some of these quote branded countries, do you think that this example of, I have a Morocco passport, from whatever low ranking, or do they need to maybe have some of this stuff notarized when it comes to a visa application? Like would that bank statement or something related to their kind of employment or their kind of like overseeing of the business operations of that limited company, is there any sort of like a official certification, maybe an apostille or something, or notary that's required in some situations, or where is that a thing or not a thing?
Well, it depends. Mostly, if you apply for residency, which I come to later, this will be a thing. Yeah, apostille. So an apostille is, to understand for the viewers, is an internationally recognized seal of that something is official, basically. So let's say you have a criminal record and the country requires you to put an apostille on it. Any member or any state that has signed the apostille convention will recognize the authenticity of this document. So let's say I apostille my document in Morocco, my criminal record, and show it to, for example, in Paraguay, as a good example. They will automatically recognize the authenticity of it because it has the certification of it. Otherwise you will need to go to the embassy, then you need to translate it, you need to have everything in present, and you have to authenticate it on the embassy if you manage to get an appointment. So it simplifies a lot of these processes at the end of the day.
Right.
But yeah, this is it for residency. It will be required, but I will get to residency
Okay.
in a moment right now.
Okay. Well, thanks for that clarification on that, because that's one of those things where some of our viewers are maybe going to be curious about some of these topics. You know, the kind of where things on a visa application kind of overlap or don't overlap when it comes to, you know, residency versus, you know, a visa application. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, I think let's dive into the next part, which is where the real fun comes. You know, so I asked you a question like, what's the most affordable way to get a residency? I want you to finish the question
Okay.
just real quick.
So
Just real quick. You don't
so
have to deep dive into it. Just quick.
so back to your question
Or take a
about
guess.
residency. You know, generally speaking, there's a few ways to go about this. You know, there's the you know, kind of like a business or work options for residency. There's time-based options for residencies, and then there's, in some unique scenarios, there's like birth options for residency, where it's like, you know, maybe you're because you were born somewhere, you might be able to, you know, become a resident. In some situations, you might actually be automatically a citizen, or some places you maybe actually even, you know, get a residency because you're the parent of somebody. So there's a number of ways to do that. As far as the specific country you're looking for, if you're looking for an answer there, it's hard for me to give you a specific answer in correlation to Morocco, because I don't know.
Oh, just take a guess in that case.
Geez, if I was going to guess about Morocco, I would say maybe a good place to, it might be easier in, maybe in France or someplace like this. I'm not 100% sure on that. I know that a lot of the residency programs in Europe have changed in recent history. So it's
Okay, so
not super clear to me where Morocco people, it's easier or not easier to get residency at this point. I think actually they lost visa free access to like even some neighbors, to like Mauritania recently. I think I read something about
Algeria,
that, or
but
maybe,
that's
yeah, maybe it was
because of a
Algeria.
conflict. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, to I will cut it short for you. Sorry to throw you here a little bit
No,
on
no,
the
no.
bus,
It's
but
great. No, you're
but
doing
it's a
great.
good exercise because you know that's where people think, you know, they have the options. But one of the easiest residencies, or let's say visas to get, is the Portugal D8 visa, freelancer visa.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna quickly shoot here a little bit of a
Well,
graph.
I
Oh, it's
wasn't
not.
totally off when I said France. I mean, they're
Yeah, yeah.
relatively close to each other. I mean, the Iberian Peninsula is, you know, bordering France. You have the beautiful Pyrenees Mountains there, and of
Yeah.
course that micro state of Andorra, which, since we're maybe in the future we need to cover tax havens, we might need to talk about Andorra at some point in the Pyrenees. But yeah, Portugal. Yes, I was going to say, yeah, the digital nomad visa, but is that different than the freelancer visa in Portugal?
Well, I mean, you can use these terms interchangeably for many
Okay,
countries,
right, right.
to be honest. But what's special with the D8 in Portugal is that they have a temporary stay visa, which is valid for 1 year, non-renewable. And then there's a residence visa, which grants 4-month visa, after which applicants must apply for a 2-year residence permit, renewable for 3 more years, totaling to 5 years of coverage. So if you have, so here are the requirements. So I'll just quickly go over the requirements. You know, you need to be 18 years old. You need to have proof of remote work or self-employment, such as a work contract, client agreements, or other supporting documentation. So this is why I mentioned building a skill and opening an LLC in the first place, because when you have an LLC and you have clients, you can prove it up. You can prove it with documents, with data, etc. So you have to sustain your income, right? So typically in Portugal, this is I don't know. I I apologize here because I forgot the specific income that is required. Um, but it's usually like in
No,
the
no
lower
apology required because
thousands.
there's so many data
Yeah,
points and a lot of these things change over time. The point that we're
yeah,
trying to cover in this particular episode is this kind of timeless essence of things and strategies that people can do. And so the specific figures of like what is the actual cost on today's date is less relevant. But in this case, you are saying the answer to your question is maybe something like the Portugal digital nomad visa or freelancer visa, if that's what you prefer to call it, would be a realistic option for a Morocco citizen. Is that if that's what you're getting at?
yes. So the digital nomad visa is for any non-EU member or non-European Economic Union member state is open. So essentially, it's open to literally everybody, as long as they fit the requirements or the criteria that is mentioned here in this list. So you're self-sufficient, you have remote work, you can prove that you have it, you have healthcare that you can afford, and you can pay for the visa. So it's we are talking here about total cost of a couple of hundreds to a couple of thousands, but not in the tens of thousands. So it's not in today's age, it's not unattainable. And I specifically chose the Portuguese example because, as I mentioned here, like the residence visa, it grants you 4 months, then 2 years, then you can renew it for another 3 years, totaling 5 years in total. And here's one thing that I want to mention here specifically for Portugal. If you can prove, or if you have legal residence of 5 years in Portugal, you can apply for citizenship. So and EU citizenship is what is on top of all those citizenships, to be honest. Portuguese citizens they can travel with an ESTA to the US. They can live and settle anywhere in the Schengen area. Um, so after 5 years of just living in Portugal, you can you can essentially apply for citizenship, which is a very smart thing to do if you are a young entrepreneur and you're eager to do
Well,
to
so I
get
want to I
the
want to just
EU
clarify
citizenship.
because
Yeah.
this data source here, I got to be honest, and I got to say that I haven't reviewed this particular data source in the past when it comes to this Portugal digital nomad visa. But I know that some countries have very specific what I call wording and verbiage when it comes to the digital nomad visas, and that in some cases they're not actually making you eligible for anything other than just renewing your digital nomad visa. This continues this kind of resident nowhere psychology of, if you want to go back into the five flag kind of terminology in days. But you're saying that the digital nomad visa, as the legislation currently is on today's date in Portugal, having a digital nomad visa there and then renewing it, say once, twice, three times, actually could make you eligible for citizenship. Is that what you're saying, Yamin?
Yes, but I have to mention here again, this is just for Portugal. It's in many digital nomad visas, they don't lead you to citizenship path.
Right.
So
That's
this
what
is
I was
very
getting at.
important.
Yes.
Yeah. So not every citizenship, digital nomad visa will grant you citizenship. But the way with how Portugal digital nomad visa is laid out, you can actually get the citizenship at the end of 5 years. I mean, obviously you need to pass some other things like speaking Portuguese to a certain level, etc. But it is a way, and it's a path, towards to um, you know diversifying your sovereignty, your global mobility in that case.
Right.
And
So,
yeah,
so, so the summary here is what you're saying is that, a lot of our material, we are speaking to the high net worth individuals, people that are maybe already, well established in their business. But what you're saying is that in this example that we started with earlier here in this episode of, maybe somebody that's not extremely wealthy in the present day, but does have the ability to get their online business going, registering that US LLC, or the other example you gave was a limited company in Hong Kong, as well as establishing banking in one of those jurisdictions to go along with that limited company,
Yeah,
could
so I
actually,
mean,
give somebody a really good, strong application for a residence permit, in this case, a digital nomad, visa or digital nomad residence permit, whichever you prefer to call it, in a place like Portugal. So, I mean, it's a really beautiful solution that you've outlined here, and I definitely think that this is an attainable thing when it comes to the financials for a lot of people. I mean, as far as I understand, this is even eligible for USA
mhm.
citizens, the digital nomad visa.
Yes, absolutely. And also, just to quickly, like cover some other routes, which I want to specifically mention is that once you have this travel history established, you can easier apply uh, for a US visa without getting rejected, because let's say you are a resident now of Portugal as a Moroccan citizen, and you apply at the Lisbon embassy for a US visa. You can prove all of this documentation. You live in Portugal, etc. So they will much easier give you the visa in the US and open up then a 10 years multiple entry visa to the United States. And
Well, let me
not sure
pause
if
you.
you
Let me
notice.
let me pause you there,
Yeah,
because what you just said there is that's like what I call now these stacked chess moves. Because now when you want to go
correct.
to
Yeah.
the, maybe since you are running a business as a Moroccan citizen in this case, in the example that we're giving of our kind of hypothetical Moroccan citizen who wants to increase his options, what you're saying here is you're stacking these chess moves in the sense that now when there's a business conference in the US that you really want to attend, it might be a week-long conference, or might be a 3-day conference or whatever, but you want to network with other business owners or other people working in that industry. I mean, I've gone to a lot of conferences in the US in years past as well, in multiple places, in Texas, wherever. And these conferences are a great place to continue, to stay up to date or just network with other people in person. You're now saying that because you have that residency status, maybe it's through the digital nomad visa in Portugal, it now becomes even easier to apply for a visa to the US. So now you can actually go to that business conference. I mean, that's stacking chess moves. I love this approach. I mean, it's very, very compelling.
And it doesn't even end there, the thing about the US visa is it grants you actually visa-free travel to other countries because, like for example, Mexico, Costa Rica, Serbia also, they allow third-party citizens who have a US visa to visit their country without the visa, whereas usually they needed one. So this is why it's so powerful to have the US visa inside of this passport. So it makes it much better, because then you're very solid. You can go to a country perhaps where you can have a birthright citizenship with an expecting child. Um, and then you can, if, when the income moves up, you can maybe invest in an RBI in
Right.
another country. You can, or invest in a CPI at the end of the day. So, and in conclusion, this is how you make all of these moves. Um, one thing compounds to another, and this is how you build your travel history, and within let's say 5 years of working hard, of making the right moves, you can have an extra citizenship, or maybe even two, depending on what you plan, or even three, depending on, yeah, birthright or CBI and naturalization. You can do this in 5 years, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
very
wanted to
approachable.
show, yeah, yeah, this is why I wanted to show this because it's an approachable way for, um, yeah, for tier C passport holders, to stack up the residency and get global mobility enhanced. Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful solution, and I really appreciate all your insights and analysis as usual. Yeah, I mean, thanks again for another fantastic episode of the Sovereign Lounge. We are helping you to become more free in this world. We have a lot of places to cover in the future here. The world is big. We are going to need to grab a seat somewhere. So thanks again for another fantastic episode, Yamin. We'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome.
Thank you.